I'd been by myself for 7 years. I had been married for 27 years, and we were both Christians when we got married. And my husband had quite a job that involved a lot of travel, which did cause problems, obviously. And he met somebody else, and we were divorced in 1997. But I spent 5 years then praying that God would restore my marriage. But then after 5 years, he divorced me for irretrievable breakdown in 2003. That's the year before we met, Neil and I met.
In my working days, I was a builder. Used to spend quite a number of visits to Africa, mainly to Zambia, although other countries as well. Just prior to meeting Rosemary, as a result of the recommendations through Friends First, I had been involved in administering a choir tour over here as a fundraising thing for a primary school that I'd started in the Copperbelt in Zambia.
I think I found an advert in a magazine. I think that's how it was. It might have been Christianity Today or something like that.
Well, I was a secretary and leader at a small independent community church in Birmingham. And as secretary, I used to get these cheesy leaflets from a new organisation which was called Friends First. Was it Don't Be a Lemon, Be a Pear? And as church secretaries have to do, you have to sort of vet all the postage that comes through and decide what to keep and what to publicise and what to throw away. And I used to think, in my married days, obviously I used to think there's nobody in church that needs this. In the bin it went. But they still kept coming. And after I lost my wife, which was totally unexpected and sudden, so that was a big challenge. But as time went by, I just got more and more desperately lonely, particularly when I was on my own and nobody else around, and realised that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life like that, and that I was going to need a partner. But at age 62, how do you go about finding a partner? And I remembered these cheesy leaflets used to come through the post. And so I read it and phoned up and eventually signed up a membership.
Yes, I did go onto a couple of websites and had some online discussions, but I didn't have any dates with anybody. So not really, no.
None at all, never any need for it.
I liked the title. I thought it was a very good title, Friends First. It wasn't all about getting married. It was building a friendship and then seeing where it went.
What attracted me in the first place was it was a Birmingham centre. It was in those days. Well, at that time, because of losing my wife and having big commitments in Africa, I was living off savings. I hadn't got a pension. And so, finances were quite tight. And I didn't want to be travelling to the other end of the country to have a cup of coffee with an unknown woman, only to find out that there was no mileage in it, as it were. So it attracted me to the fact that it was a local Birmingham organisation in those days. But that was the reason I think I went for it.
Honest, I had very little experience of Friends First because the first lot of profiles that I got was Neil's, and that was it. So, I didn't really have any further contact with Friends First. Well, it was like being on a roller coaster, to be quite honest. I got the first lot of profiles and I was going out with a meal with friends that night. And one of them stood out, which was Neil's. And I showed the list to the girls and said, which one have I chosen? And they all pointed to Neil. Before I even started all of this, I had been very hurt, obviously, from being divorced. And I thought, no way do I want to make a mistake. So, praying and put it in God's hands was vital because I didn't want any red herrings or, to go off track at all. And I didn't want to be emotionally swept away. I kept a journal at the time, which it was very helpful because I can look back now and think exactly what I was thinking and praying and saying. And it was quite helpful when we got together so that Neil could see where I'd been coming from.
So I contacted Rosemary when I got back, and by email, and we hadn't even spoken to one another, so we didn't know what we sounded like. But she responded positively, and I said that I'm still very busy, but I suggested that we arrange a meeting when I was in the area setting up a concert with the church in Ashbourne, and knowing that Ashbourne was 20 odd miles away from Chesterfield, it was a suitable place for her to come to. Went and had a cup of coffee and a toasted tea cake, and it was so noisy and so busy that we couldn't possibly have a proper conversation in there, and I'd only got an hour anyway until I got to get us to my next appointment. So I said, would you mind coming and just sitting in the car park, which is round the back of the cafe shop? And that's what we did, and that's when Rosemary said she had her interview. And my memory of it is that both of us pressed against the driver's door, Rosemary pressed with her back against the passenger's door, and we were talking at each other at arm's length. But we covered a lot of ground in that 3/4 of an hour.
Me. I thought that Friends First gave they swapped profiles. So I wrote thinking that Neil had my profile, but of course he hadn't. But he quite liked the look of it. So I got an email back saying, no, I haven't received your email, but and that was in December, I think. But it was actually quite a while before we had any face-to-face or even verbal contact. I think our first phone call was in February, and we contacted in December. But Neil was very busy with African tours and things then. So we didn't actually get a chance to meet for the first time until March. He sounded stable. He sounded a man of God, which was what I was looking for. A similar Christian upbringing. He was very practical. He built his own house, and that was definitely a positive. It just sounded a nice man.
No, I was impressed because the statement that she made, I want to be with a man who loves God, and I want to walk alongside and serve with him. That was impressive.
No, not really. I didn't.
Well, having met a number of women during the year with Friends First, I had adjusted my position on not marrying or remarrying a divorced person, because I was very much as Rosemary was initially. And because of the various stories of some of the women that I'd met about their unfortunate experiences with their partners, it made me reassess the whole issue of marriage after divorce. We had both prayed very much about God being in control of the whole situation as our relationship developed. And we were both very convinced that he has been very much in control, and still is, of our lives.
The first time we met, it was like a job interview. He was very easy to talk to, very direct. It was kind of halfway between Birmingham and Derbyshire, where I lived. And by the time I got home, because Neil had asked me for my reaction, I put more down on an email and sent it to him. And he had jobs to do that afternoon. It was waiting for him when he got back. I was grateful to be level-headed about it and not emotionally in a twirl.
Well, Rosemary was still working part-time, and she was a physiotherapist in a local hospital in Chesterfield. I wasn't working, so my time was my own to manage, and so we did fit in. Well, it was after the choir tour had finished. They came at the end of April and went back home to Zambia at the beginning of June. In Sutton Coldfield, Rosemary was there with a friend of hers, and we chatted before the evening concert started. Chatted quite a lot. She said, look, you look absolutely worn out. I said, I am. I'm very elated, but I'm very worn out as well. She said, how about if we meet and have a walk, and you just get relaxed a bit and give us a chance to, really get to know one another a bit better. And I think I'd seen enough of Rosemary to want to take things further at that point. So I agreed.
We met in Dovedale in Derbyshire and walked the whole way, had lunch, came back, sat on a rock. It was quite a while away from Chesterfield, and yet one of my work colleagues walked past as we were sitting on this rock getting acquainted, which was a bit strange. I know. I think actually things probably would have happened quicker had Neil not been busy with the African choir that was coming over.
On the walk in Dovedale, excitement, inquisitiveness, terrible nervousness. I think we had our first physical contact in terms of hand holding, and it was almost like being a teenager again. And on the way back from the cafe at the far end of Dovedale, it's about a 2.5, 3 mile walk each way. So we'd done about 4.5 miles. We were halfway back, and there was a lovely flat rock. And I said, let's have a rest and have a sit down on that rock. And we sat down, and my opening gambit was, tell me your story then. It's as good a line as any to start a conversation, isn't it? I mean, previous to that, we'd just been walking and, small talk. And halfway through telling me a little bit of her story, this couple walked by and, hello, Rosemary, didn't expect to see you here. This was one of her work colleagues out for a ramble during the day. And my immediate thought was, gosh, she's put the spies out to make sure that she's safe in this strange man's hands.
We would say, I've got a hard question for you. Brace yourself. And that was really helpful because we talked about everything.
We agreed that there's no point in falling out over stupid little things. It's usually very small things that can actually drive a wedge in your relationship. I can remember going to Rosemary's house in Chesterfield because we used to actually visit each other. It was either visit one another in Birmingham so there's quite a lot of travelling between the two centres, Birmingham and Chesterfield. And I can remember going to Rosemary's house to see her mum, because her mum lived with her in her house and her brother. I said, I'm a very old-fashioned chap. We've spent some time together, as you can see, and you're getting to know me. But I'm very old-fashioned, and I believe it's right that I should ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. And her mum's reaction was, well, I rather thought you'd want more than that. Is her hand enough? So she got a good sense of humour, and she was more than pleased to promise me Rosemary's hand in marriage. We'd already, on one of our little shopping jaunts, got rings and that sort of thing sorted. And it probably wasn't a get down on my knees job.
No, I don't think it was.
We just came to the agreement that we were going to be together forever, and we might as well formalise it.
Our wedding reception was in the garage, and it was the first time our two families had met on our wedding day.
And it was just them.
And it was just them. It was incredibly special.
They don't see much of each other because they're spread about a bit, but they still respect one another. And they were very supportive from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Rosemary was accepted into the Genders clan very, very easily, and she's loved by all of them. And I think the same for me in her clan, as it were. We would often add on the information. We've made another vow as well. And it's come from our experience of previous life, is that we did not set time aside to read God's word enough. We did, but we didn't do it in a disciplined way. And we have vowed to each other that we will, every day, we will read the Bible aloud, a paragraph or several verses each, and then we swap over and listen to the other one. So we share it between us. And the first few years we read the Bible, the same version, all the way through in a year. We realised that, it was becoming a bit of a habit instead of a blessing. So we took different versions, and each year we've took a different version. And now we just read. We don't set ourselves to read it all in the year. No. We just read. And we read whatever the Holy Spirit is telling us to read and look at. and try and feed on that. And that has been a real blessing in our marriage.
It's not a duty. It's as natural as having breakfast every day, and as good as having breakfast every day. It's just probably the best advice we could give anyone, I think. Pray about it first, because I'm pretty sure that God brought us together. Well, I know, and I probably knew right from the beginning. But it's such a scary, potentially dangerous thing to do, but it's so worth it.
To know that the organisation is very sound, it's got very sound principles. I think that's worth just being able to tell people that they're in safe hands.